Lifelines for the travel industry are few and far between, but one may just have been given. Quarantine rules are being relaxed in the United States. The CDC has issued new guidance ahead of the busy holiday season, a shortening of the quarantine time for 7 to 10 days after suspected coronavirus exposure. It's down from 14 days. The CDC says by reducing isolation periods, more people may comply. It's also advising Americans to postpone their holiday travel. From Stamford, Connecticut, Kayak CEO Steve Hafner. Steve, it is always good to have you. I appreciate it. Steve, this is really tricky, isn't it? Because the CDC still says don't travel, but in a recognition of the reality that people are ignoring them, they say, OK, well, if you do travel, please, let's quarantine for 7 to 10. At least you might keep that.
Yeah, thanks, Richard, for having me on. It is a little troublesome for consumers to try to navigate these changing restrictions and advisories. You know, I think we just came out of a holiday period where a lot of consumers wanted to travel, and at the last minute, the CDC recommended that they didn't. And as a result, while media reports showed a lot of Americans in crowded airports, the fact of the matter was airports weren't crowded. You know, we had over 1 million people travel on Wednesday and Sunday around Thanksgiving, which sounds like a lot. But in reality, typically, you'll see 2.5 to 3 million people travel that period of time. So it's down about 60%. And I think holiday travel, if you look between Thanksgiving and Christmas, based on Kayak numbers, queries are down 80% from previous year. So I think people are still very confused and are taking a wait-and-see attitude.
The UNWTO has put out a report this morning. I was just reading that the number of countries that have removed or reduced restrictions is now something like 70% of countries have now at least taken away some of them, either by reducing quarantines or doing quarantines and testing. But that's still not enough to get international travel up and running again. I don't see that happening much before spring to middle of next year at the earliest. Would you agree?
Yes. I mean, we've consistently said that a lot of things have to come into place for travel to rebound to where it was, and we think it's a multi-year period. So it's a combination of vaccines, loosening restrictions, good weather. Actually, no one likes to travel historically in the wintertime, and then you know, a good and safe environment, especially on the economic side, for consumers not only to feel safe to travel, but also to have the monetary and financial means to do so.
If we look at Kayak and how you've survived, we talked earlier in the pandemic about the measures that you've had to take. Do you expect, as we go into a very difficult winter, you'll have to do more?
I don't think so. And certainly we took some very tough measures very early on in this pandemic. You know, we laid off about 25% of our staff, some of whom we've hired back. But we did a one cut and done. So we're very well prepared for the rebound. And in the meantime, we're doing a lot of work to make our services even better for travelers. So, you know, when demand does come back, we're ready for it.
Do you see, we were talking on this program yesterday about the way in which the new star rating, maybe won't be quite so vulgar, but will be some form of health grading. Hotels will be, and I don't just mean immediately because of the crisis, but going forward, some form of health grading on hotels or restaurants or whatever. They will promote the fact that they are that they have ventilation, whatever. Do you see this as being in the future cards?
I don't think so. I mean, I think all operators in the travel business and on the hospitality, the restaurant business, are doing everything they can to promote safe dining and safe travel. So I think broadly speaking, you'll see everyone adhere to the same set of standards once those standards get established. So I don't know that we necessarily need a scorecard and another layer of regulation on top of these businesses. But you know, where there are differences in behavior, particularly on the airline side today, like Delta still reserves a middle seat and keeps that open, whereas most of the other major carriers don't do that. You will see Kayak, for example, flag stuff like that. But I don't know that I necessarily believe that we'll see health measures, particularly as vaccines get out there and people become less scared of COVID.
Right.
Because
but you'll agree your vaccination, as Alan Joyce of Qantas said, your vaccination and the certificate and the lodging of it in a reputable place will be part of your travel, that and tests, part of your travel passport.
It might be, but I think that'll be on a voluntary basis. There's an industry trade group called IATA, which is trying to recommend a digital health certificate for consumers. I don't know how much traction that's going to get, but I do think on a carrier by carrier basis, you'll see some airlines, particularly international airlines, who say, please have a verification of a negative COVID test or a vaccine or past antibodies before you board our planes.
Good to see you, sir. We'll keep in touch as we go through this winter, and looking forward to next year and, of course, when things get better. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
That's fine.